Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Wilson. I'm the founder and host of the People in Fundraising Professional Conversations webcast. And for a first for the program is we're doing an interview on a Saturday, and I'm delighted to welcome Brian Robinson to our program today. Brian, welcome from Utah all the way to Florida.
Thank you. It's very good to be with you today, Tim.
Likewise, appreciate your time, and I'm excited to talk with you. Just by way of a couple of introductory comments, Brian is the director of research at the Focus Group, and he'll talk a little bit more about his career. Obviously, that's one of the big points of these conversations, what the Focus Group does. And in addition, Brian is the current director of membership for Apra Florida, which is one of the state regional chapters of Apra International, an organization that has chapters throughout the United States and a few foreign countries. And Brian and I met virtually through an Apra chapters program in March. We kept getting put into the same breakout session, I think at least 2 or 3 times. And so we hit it off. And as I was thinking about this program around the same time that Brian and I met, I thought I'd like to talk with Brian more because he's just very friendly and approachable, and I enjoyed talking with him in the breakout sessions. So thanks for your patience, Brian, and thanks for being on the program today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. So, Brian, if you could just share with our audience how you entered the fundraising profession and what you do as the director of research for Focus Group, please.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you a very short answer, and then I'll give you the long version as well.
All right.
So the short answer to that question is, I wanted to live at the beach. I've always loved the beach since I was a kid, and I've always wanted to live at the beach. And so now let me give you the long version answer so that makes sense. Let's travel back in time to about the summer of 2018.
Okay.
And I'm actually, at that point in time, I'm currently unemployed. I'm working on my MBA, and I have about one more. I'm in next to the last class, and I have one more to go. And so I'm starting to look for some employment, and I'm trying to find something that would align with my years of experience. I had been a youth pastor for 2 years, and then I started a church and pastored it for 12 years. And then I worked for an organization called Dynamic Church Planning International, which helps train church planners all across the world. So I had all these years of ministry experience.
Yeah.
And then when I was doing my MBA, I fell in love with this class called quantitative analysis. And, didn't know anything about it when I got into it, and I just really enjoyed it. And so as I'm approaching the end, I'm trying to find something that's going to allow me to take my years of experience in ministry, this new love for quantitative analysis, and kind of put it together into a job. And if I could find something at the beach, that would be great, right? So I was living in West Virginia. That's where I was born and raised and lived all of my life. Northern part of West Virginia, very close to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, just to kind of give you the area of the country. And so I'm going through Indeed, and I'm looking, and I come across this ad for a research analyst with the Focus Group. And it's located in St. Augustine, Florida. Now, I was familiar with St. Augustine, Florida, because I had done my undergraduate at Trinity Baptist College in Jacksonville, Florida, which is about 45 minutes north of St. Augustine. And when my wife and I would go on dates, St. Augustine was the place to come to. And so, so we were already familiar with the area. And so I'm on Indeed, I'm looking, I find this job. It's located in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm like, oh, wow. So I'm reading through the description, and the Focus Group is a fundraising consulting firm that primarily helps Christian nonprofits and ministries with their fundraising.
Oh, okay.
And so they're looking for a research analyst. I'm reading through the job description. Now, I'd never heard of prospect research. I didn't even know people did that for a living, to be honest with you. Like, but I'm reading through it. I'm like, oh, I could probably do that. And so I think, well, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I mean, go ahead and apply now. If you're familiar with applying to anything on Indeed, it tells you how many people have applied to it, usually, right? And so about 100 people had applied to this. And so I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to get, I didn't have any prior experience really in doing that. Now I had a little bit of experience doing research. When I was a pastor, I was bivocational. So I'd also worked in the magistrate court system. And I was a magistrate assistant. And so one of the things that I did was I did some research on case law for my magistrate to help him prepare for cases. And so I did have a little bit of experience in research, but nothing like what is involved in prospect research.
Sure.
So I didn't think I had a shot, right? So I go ahead and I apply. And the next thing I know, I have an interview. And so I had this phone interview, and then I'm like, I don't hear anything. And I'm like, okay, well, they probably found somebody else. And then, like a few weeks go by, I get another email, and I've made it to the next round. And then the next round, it's like a 2-month process before they actually finally hired me to come on. So this was a new position for the focus group. They had somebody who was kind of doing it part-time at the time that they hired me. And so they bring me on to do it full-time. And I just had to dig in and learn how to do it. I mean, there was nobody that was really there to train me. And so that's where Apra, right? Association of Professional Researchers for Advancement, I found them and was able to get on their website and just learn a lot.
Oh, okay.
And so I really did a lot of, I guess, self-teaching with it to learn how to do it. And so I've really developed my skills over the past 3.5 years in doing it, and have enjoyed the opportunity. So that's how I ended up in my current role in fundraising.
Dynamite. Well, it sounds like you threaded the needle to get the skills you have, that it combines a very personal subject matter interest for you with ministry work, and you're at the beach. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Good for you. Dynamite. And can you just talk a little bit about your role, Brian, with Apra Florida? And before we went live, Brian shared a little bit with me about some initiative that he's working on related to the Apra Florida membership. And I'm excited to hear him tell us more about it. And another reason why I want to talk with him is I really appreciate how active Brian is on LinkedIn, sharing his own posts or the focus group's posts and Apra Florida. Especially during a pandemic, I think we're in the Apra community, we're really focused on spreading the word about what our chapter is providing for content. And Brian, you do a great job with that. So bravo.
Well, thank you. But, Apra Florida has really been a great blessing to me, because I'm the only one that does what I do in the focus group. So I don't have a bunch of colleagues where I can talk about prospect research and so when I discovered our Apra Florida chapter and I got involved with it, that is where I got to develop relationships with colleagues who knew what I was talking about when I talk about prospect research.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I got involved and just really enjoyed it, building the relationships. And then there was a opening on the board of directors. And so I just inquired if that was something that they would be interested in having me come on board with. And so they invited me to come on board as the director of membership. So I've been on the board since October of last year. And so I've just been reaching out to the membership, trying to get to know them better. Somebody joins or renews, I make sure that they, get a welcome message either by email or on LinkedIn, just saying, hey, we are so glad that you're a part of our chapter. I think it's important that all of, fellow APRA colleagues that are out there have a place to come together where they can share ideas. And that's one of the things that I love about APRA is just the collaborative effort that the organization as a whole has, where you're sharing different ideas, you're sharing different resources that you use, what works, what doesn't work, just, some of the different practices, procedures that people use. It has been a tremendous blessing to me in my career. And so I've enjoyed being a part of Apra Florida and just being able to reach out to the membership and try to bring more people on as well. And so if you're in Florida, you want to be a part of our chapter, please come on board. It's only $30 for the whole year.
Wow.
But we also have folks that are outside of Florida. So you don't have to live in Florida to be a part of Apra Florida. So
nice.
Anybody's allowed to join.
That's terrific. And you told me that you have 58 members right now in the chapter.
We are up to 58. Yes, we have. Okay. I think we're probably a little bit over that, but we have some folks that have signed up but haven't paid yet. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'd say we're close to 60. My goal is to try to get us up to about 100.
Dynamite. I wish you the best with that. That would be awesome.
That would be great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that explanation about your role with APRA, Brian.
Absolutely.
If we can go back to the focus group for a follow-up. The focus group is turning 40 years old this year. And one of the reasons why I love doing these interviews is it allows me to do, just like you, I do research full-time in my day job at Weber State University here in Ogden. But for the People in Fundraising podcast series, I also do a little bit of research on the people I'm talking to and their company, their employer. And the research is mostly like, what are they posting on LinkedIn? And then I look at their employer's website. And so focus group turns 40 this year. So in your tenure with the company, Brian, are there any particular projects, or if you're able to talk about a particular client, that they stand out to you as a moment professionally that influenced your work with particular enthusiasm or passion? And if it's ministry, great. If it's something else, I'd just love to hear it.
Absolutely. We have this incredible opportunity where we serve about 90 to 100 clients currently, and they run the gamut, right? So we have small Christian K through 12 schools. We have Christian colleges, universities, seminaries. We have churches. We have Christian camps. We have rescue missions. We have ministries that have a national reach, and we have ministries that have a global reach. So that's just incredible organizations that are doing incredible work. I think of one who is Convoy of Hope, and they mainly try to go in when there's a disaster in an area, and try to they come in with supplies and minister to the people. But right now they're focused on Ukraine with the situation that's going on there. And so what a great opportunity to serve a client who's doing something like that.
Yeah.
But thinking along the lines of what you're asking in your question, my role is very behind the scenes. I do the research, I give it to our consultant, and then the consultant gives it to our client, and then the client gives it to whoever their frontline fundraiser is. So I am so far removed, I rarely get to hear how my work impacted the client.
Yeah.
But I did recently hear our CEO shared with me about a Christian camp located out in California, who's one of our clients. And when the pandemic hit, they were in a situation where they were very close to having to close their doors. They asked me to do prospect research on 40 of their donors. And so I did that, and then they took those, we call them snapshots. And so it's it's basically a profile of the donor, it's a biography of who they are, but then it, provides their net worth and their gift capacity. And so they took those, and then they built a strategy, and then they approached those 40 donors, and then those 40 donors stepped up to the plate, and they were able to, and gave significant amount of gifts to our client, and they were able to keep their doors open. And so this camp that had this long history of serving youth was able to keep the doors open and is still going strong today. So
That's
that,
awesome.
yeah, that's just a great, for me personally, I'm the person, I want to know how my work impacts someone. And in this role, how it impacts our client. And so I was so thankful that our CEO shared that with me so I could see how my work impacted our clients.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Absolutely.
so cool. And I agree with you. I think it's a commonality in the work we do in fundraising with prospect management and research that we don't hear the impact of our work as much as we would like to. And I don't have any personal anecdotes for how to move the needle on that. But if others in our audience do, we'd love to hear that because it is
Absolutely.
important. This is, we're pouring in our time and our talent and effort to the work we do in support of the mission that our employer has. And hearing these stories is really powerful. So thank you.
Yeah, I've done, in the 3.5 years, I've done almost 950
Wow.
major donors that I've researched, and I've not met a single one of them. So,
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, they sound like such neat people. I'd love to meet them. And,
Sure.
so.
So before we went live today, Brian, if I can follow up about your work here and your career, I should say. We were talking about what questions may be of interest to you in our podcast this morning, and you were very enthusiastic to share one particular career highlight that involved you raising funds for a low-income organization, or no, sorry, a low-income area in your home state of West Virginia. So if you can talk more about that, I'd love to hear what that entailed.
Yeah, absolutely. So in September of 2000, myself and my wife and about 5 other people came together and we started a church from scratch.
Wow.
And that was a big undertaking, as you can imagine. Now, to give you the setting, this was in a town of about 3,000 people. So it's, it's not this big metropolis area, right? Now, it did have some neighboring towns that if you brought those together, I would say maybe population of 25,000 altogether, right?
Okay.
But in this town, there was already churches established. There just wasn't one of my denomination.
Okay.
So it sounded insane to begin with, to even do this, right? To take this on. So, but we did it. The first 4 years, we rented a building out and we started our fundraising process to set aside money so that we could eventually buy our own property.
Okay.
Now, when that 4 years came to pass, the building was sold and the new owner no longer wanted us in it. So now we were forced to find a place. And so we looked around and looked around. We couldn't really find anything. Well, it just so happened at the same time, this old dilapidated church building that was built in 1917 came up for sale. Now, this thing had not been used as a church for about 20 years. It was privately owned. There was a woman who owned a lot of rental properties on that same block. And so she used the church building to store some of her different items, right? So like construction materials, carpet, things that she would need in her rental. She used it, but she did no upkeep on this building whatsoever. So it was the last thing that I wanted to buy. I mean, this was like, it really should have just been torn down. The assessed value on this building was $5,000. That's how bad of condition it was. So what did we end up doing? Well, we ended up buying it, right?
Did you consider tearing it down?
You know what, we did, but here was the thing. It was structurally sound. Now, a 2x10 and a 2x12 in that building was actually 2 inches by 10 inches, 2 inches by 12. I mean, and they were hand cut solid oak.
Wow.
I mean, so the foundation was good, and the the structure itself was good. It just needed a lot of work. And so yes, we did consider tearing it down. So what we did is we started doing fundraising, and it was, now you got to keep in mind, this is again a low income area. And so we couldn't go to people and ask for major gifts, because that's just, a major gift to someone in that area would be like $100.
Yeah.
So we had to do some different fundraising activities. So the women of the church, I mean, they did so much with the fundraising efforts. They came together with all of their favorite recipes, and they created this cookbook that we then went out into the community and sold. They would come together at Christmas time, and they would bake cookies, and we would sell trays of cookies at Christmas time to different places in the community. We did a fundraiser where we called it an Iron Man contest, and it was me and a couple other guys, and we set up ironing boards along with clothes, right? And so we had this panel of women that sat, and then they judged us after we ironed the different things, right? And so people had to pay to come, and they could sponsor one of us, and then we had like a spaghetti dinner with it, and so just different things like that. Now we did have a couple grants that we were able to secure from some places, and then we did have some churches that contributed some financially as well. But for the most part, we did all of the fundraising ourselves. Now we ended up, we probably did $100,000 worth of renovation on that building.
Whoa.
And we ended up only having to take out a loan for about $25,000. And so we raised the rest of that money just by doing different things like that, as I talked about. And what we would do is we started with the basement. We did it first, and then we met in there, and then as we got money, then we did, so we contracted out for the bigger projects like the roof and the siding and the windows, but then all the other work we did inside. So the men of the church would come together on a Saturday. We'd spend about 8 to 10 hours there. The ladies of the church would come, and they would cook lunch for us. And it was just this great effort of everybody coming together. And at that point, we only had maybe 40 people. The church probably doubled in size after the building was done, right? Because, people were kind of watching and waiting. Okay, we'll wait till they get done, and then we'll check it out, right? So we don't have to do any work. So you're talking about, 40 people that really just came together, worked very hard, and made that, in the end, the assessed value was about $225,000. So we took it from a $5,000 to a $225,000 building. And in fact, if you were to get on my LinkedIn page, there's a little link there where you can actually see the video. It's about a 4.5-minute video where you can watch the progress of.
Oh my goodness!
Of that, so
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that was a great experience. Again, not the major donor fundraising like we're so used to in our current professions, but just doing some little different things that really was a lot of hard work, but added up to where we were able to do all the renovations on that building.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wonder, would you be okay if, when I go live with your interview, probably in July, if I could include the link to that 4-minute progress? That'd be so cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's dynamite. Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
So yeah, how you go on from there? This question may be, it's certainly larger than just the one terrific and heartwarming story you just shared with us. But thinking, throughout, your career, your ministry work, your family, other pursuits in life, this is a great successful story that you just shared with us. So again, thinking of all of the areas of your life, what does success look like to you? And it could be in any one of those touch points in your life.
Yeah. For me, I feel successful when I'm helping others succeed. So when I think back, when I was a pastor, it was helping people succeed personally in their lives, helping them succeed in their marriages, helping them succeed as parents, just coming alongside them and doing whatever I could to encourage them, point them in the right direction for the resources that they could use to help them be successful.
Yeah.
When I think of my time with Dynamic Church Planning International, it was, helping individuals be successful at starting a church, right? That made me feel good. To me, that was success. When I think of my current role, it is helping our clients be able to get the funding that they need so that they can fulfill the mission that they feel called to do. And so to me, that makes me feel successful.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And it was nice that you touched on many areas of your life and what success looks like in those areas. So thank you. It sounds like you've got great priorities and ultimately it's all about how you can help others succeed. So that's very generous. As you think about your career again, this question is more about an experience that stretched you as a person in the work you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I have to go back to pastoring. Starting a church from scratch and then pastoring it, and then putting forth that effort to do whatever you can to make it succeed. So that could be that could translate to starting a new business as well, right? So that really, for me, just stretched me in so many ways. Because again, I was bivocational, so I was working a full-time job while trying to do what I could to make this church be a success.
Yeah.
And you go into it, and people start to come, you start to build relationships with them, and the success of that organization, whether you like it or not, at least in my experience, relied heavily on what you say and what you do. Because you say the one thing wrong or you do something wrong, the fact is the people are coming there voluntarily. They're contributing to it voluntarily.
Yeah.
So you offend them, there's the risk of them walking out the door and never coming back.
Sure.
And that did happen. And not necessarily always because of something I did or said, but maybe somebody else that was part of the organization, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't always done intentionally either. It just, sometimes people take things the wrong way or what have you. And so there was that constant, we would build up and then we would go down and then we'd have to kind of start over. I remember my one professor who taught me on church planning in college, and he said, you usually start a church 3 times. So in other words, you get a group of people that stick, and then several of them move on, and then you get another group. Some of them stick the whole time, but he was basically saying by the time you get to that 3rd time, he says, then you really start to grow. And I think we really saw that as well. But there's just that, learning to be patient, learning to be diplomatic, learning not to take things personally, learning that no matter what decision you make, there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like that decision, and you just have to accept it, right?
Yeah.
So that experience really, really stretched me personally, for sure.
That's so good to hear. And I appreciated how you mentioned early on in that answer that it has application to professions as well. But that is so true. And I've seen that in my own church where people, mean well, and sometimes the other person takes outreach or a comment differently, and things go south. So yeah, I think just trying to be generous and give people the benefit of the doubt has personal and professional implications. So I appreciated that. Are you still connected to this church in West Virginia?
I'm not. I stepped down from pastoring in 2012, so it's been 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I stepped down at a time my wife's parents had both got ill. Her father had a brain aneurysm rupture and he was paralyzed on his left side. Shortly after that, her mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so we really wanted to focus on taking care of them. And I couldn't effectively do my role as a pastor and focus on taking care of them. So I had to make a choice. And naturally, family wins out when it, you know, that's how I am. And so we took care of that. So
that's important. Absolutely. That's good. So Brian, you've covered a lot of ground in the half hour so far, and you've touched on some great work initiatives. You've mentioned an MBA. So you've done a lot in your career, starting a church, gathering people together for it, building the infrastructure for it, raising funds, working near the beach. So as you think of how you've gotten where you are now, is there any advice that if you could go back in time, that you would give to your younger self, whether it's professionally or with ministry or personally?
Yeah, the advice I would give my younger self is to take time for yourself. As I mentioned, I was bivocational when I was pastoring, so I was working a full-time job, trying to get the church established and functioning. So I was working between 80 to 100 hours a week.
Wow.
In addition to trying to, maintain my relationship with my wife and my children. And so I did not take any time for myself. And so, I'm just going to be transparent with you. In 2008, 2009, we had finally finished up the building and I was just burnt out. I was actually diagnosed with major depression by my doctor.
Wow.
And so I had to start into a series of treatments for that.
Yeah.
And so thinking back on it, if I was able to talk to my younger self, I would say, take time for yourself, do some things that you enjoy doing, so that you can try to at least avoid the burnout and the major depression.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable with your diagnosis of major depression, and for seeking help. I think generally this is a broad brush, but I think it's hard for men, in my experience, where we're like a lot of us are wired to be the solution provider, the problem solver for others, until we just get burned out. And it can be challenging for husbands, parents, to do as you say, like take time for yourself. So kudos to you. I'm glad you've done that.
Yes, I'm trying to be more of an advocate for mental health because there is such a stigma that goes with it. And I think there are a lot of people who don't get the help that they need simply because of that stigma. And so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Brian, this has been just really delightful and enjoyable. Thank you for your time today. I just really appreciate, we've had a wide-ranging conversation. We have not met in person, but I hope to someday meet you in person. And you've just shared some really great, thoughtful comments and experiences with us. So as a final question, we've just talked about what you would give to yourself as advice in your younger days. Now thinking ahead, as you contemplate your future, is there any particular goal or dream that you have that you would feel inclined to share with our audience?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll be 50 in October, so
all right.
I'm getting to that point where I'm like, some of these dreams that I'm thinking of, maybe I really need to pursue them. I would love to be able to one day step into an executive director position of a nonprofit.
Mm.
Now, I don't know which nonprofit yet, so
Sure.
but I would love to be able to step into that type of role and have that experience at some point in my career.
Oh, dynamite. Well, don't bet against yourself, and I would not bet against you. I mean, the things you've talked about today are some really challenging moments that you have seized and with gusto, and you've made them come true. Like, again, going back to getting a community of people of faith together, and you get this church, this building that didn't seem like it was going to be what you needed, but you put in the work and the time and the funds to make it something beautiful. So if past is prologue, there is likely an executive director role in your future, because I just, what you shared today makes me confident that you rise to these challenges.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, any last thoughts for our audience today, Brian? Anything you'd like to share before we sign off and let you get back to the beach on a Saturday in Florida?
No, it's been a great privilege to share with you my life and my career, and I just appreciate what you're doing, and bringing all the different guests onto your show. It's really great to hear all the different people in the different roles in fundraising. I believe those of us who are in fundraising, we're really doing it for the bigger picture, for the mission of our organization. In my case, it's for the mission of all the different organizations that we serve.
Yeah.
So that you can ultimately serve the people who benefit from your organization. So it's a great opportunity to be a part of the fundraising community.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I've been in it for over 20 years, and you said it well. And I appreciate your comments about being a guest on this podcast and what I'm trying to do with our audience. So thank you so much. Well, Brian, it's been delightful to talk with you today. And just want to encourage our listeners that, again, this will go live probably in July. This is June 18th right now. But I'm excited to share your message with our audience on LinkedIn and YouTube. And so thank you for your time. And our audience, you can find Brian's conversation on my website, peopleinfundraising.com, in a few weeks. And again, it'll go live on other platforms as well. And you can find other conversations in the series on my website. And if there are any people in the audience that would love to participate in this professional conversations webcast, I'd love to hear from you as well. So with that, we will sign off. Brian, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.